we'll just let people come in as they come in. We're live streaming this in a minute, or good to go? Yep, okay, cool. Thank you everyone so much for participating in this Democratic primary Secretary of State forum this evening at the Rochambeau Library. I'm not going to speak long, but I do want to say the following, and forgive me. You know, on the outside of this library is a large medallion that says Enlightenment, and our candidates here have names that mean both love and beauty. So in the spirit of love, beauty, and enlightenment, I'd like to begin. Thank you. Our candidates are Representative Greg Amore and Stephanie Beauty. They will introduce themselves in a minute. For the rules, we flip the coin at the beginning to determine who goes first here. It'll be Stephanie. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds. We have a timekeeper up front with yellow and red cards. The yellow card will go up at 15 seconds when you have 15 seconds to go. Red card when you stop. At that point, they know to kind of wrap things up. I don't think I'm gonna have to be too tough on anybody. If the candidate mentions another candidate within, like, you know, some kind of like little dig or something, that candidate will be given a chance to respond, 30 seconds to respond. I think that's pretty much right. No crosstalk. This is going to be a really polite forum, right? I think we're really trying to get to issues, and so all my questions are based on the duties and responsibilities of Secretary of State and how they plan to execute the office were they to be elected. So, without any further ado, let me preamble this with the mission of the Rhode Island Department of State is to engage and empower all Rhode Islanders by making government more accessible and transparent, encouraging civic pride, enhancing commerce, and ensuring that elections are fair, fast, and accurate. So, in your opening statement, starting with Stephanie, please explain who you are and give a general overview of your experience and philosophy of government and public service.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here in the Rochambeau Library for hosting this. Authentic civic engagement is described as one that denotes a shared value in the interest of the community and the desire to improve that community's needs. My name is Stephanie Beauty. I'm a senior IT professional. I work for a software company in Boston, and before that I worked for GE for a number of years. In my time while at GE, I worked and managed the cyber risk management team, work on the divestiture, which is just a fancy way of saying that we were spinning off businesses, and had a team of 7 where we brought in $25 billion of revenue in a quarter. On top of that, I own the GE at Work mobile app and the GE intranet for 250,000 GE employees globally. My experience makes me uniquely qualified for this role, primarily because Secretary of State should be a very neutral party, someone whose sole interest is into making sure that elections are fair, secure, and accurate. We do not need the ongoing debate of polarization between both parties. And so having a fresh perspective, someone who's going to use IT to influence and improve our systems is dramatically needed in this modern day and age. And so I want to share and improve the systems that we currently have in order to build upon the infrastructure to take this into a modern space. Thank you.
I want to make a note here. When you're speaking to the mic, you can be far away. You have about 8 inches to a foot. You don't have to be right on top of it, so everybody can relax a little bit. All good. I should have said that at the beginning of the Representative Amore.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to Uprise for hosting this event tonight, and for the Rochambeau Library
Probably should have mentioned that.
for the venue. As someone that's been campaigning for this office for 13 months, largely on a platform of civic engagement, I'm thrilled to be here in this setting, and frankly disappointed that more of the media outlets have not offered us an opportunity for a forum like this, and have not offered all of the candidates for CD2 or the governor's race a forum. I think that's not good for democracy. With that said, I'm Greg Amore. I'm a state representative from East Providence. For 26 years, I taught civics and government at East Providence High School, where I also coached hockey and baseball. For the past 6 years, I've been the athletic administrator at East Providence. A big job, $600,000 budget, 72 employees, human resources. And most importantly, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself personally. My wife is here. She's my high school sweetheart. We are both educated in the East Providence school system. as our two daughters, Tess, a graduate of American University, and Meg, a junior at Manhattan College. My mom was a school secretary. My dad was a maintenance man for Narragansett Electric. I'm the first person in my family to attend and graduate college. And both my parents instilled in me a deep, deep love for public service because they told me it was important to serve your community. So prior to being an elected official, aside from the volunteerism I did in East Providence, in 2012, I ran for office as a member of for the General Assembly. I was elected, and I've been honored to serve the people of East Providence for 10 years in that capacity.
Thank you. Following up, and this will go to Representative Amore. It's a very simple one. Why do you want to be Rhode Island's next Secretary of State?
I think I have a unique skill set that combines my professional experience as a civics and government teacher, and much of the office is dedicated to civic engagement. My professional experience in managing a large system, the East Providence School Department's athletic system, which is a K-8 system plus Special Olympics. And then my experience in government, 10 years in the General Assembly, chair of the House Finance Subcommittee on Education, chair of the Small Business Committee, vice chair of the Education Committee. I've sponsored and advocated for legislation that's directly tied to this office, including being the first co-sponsor of the Let Rhode Island Vote Act, where I whipped that in the General Assembly. I managed a piece of it on the floor. I've also authored and co-sponsored the Civic Literacy Act, which mandates that every Rhode Island high school student take at least one semester of civics before they graduate and prove proficiency with a project-based requirement. Along with that, when I served as the chairman of the Small Business Committee during the pandemic, I was able to meet so many small business owners, and I was able to listen to their concerns. I was the co-author of the Small Business Development Fund, which helped businesses get capital that they couldn't otherwise get through traditional avenues. I worked very closely and helped finance the Small Business Development Center at URI, where we work with businesses, startups, and we help businesses to continue to prosper. So I think I'm uniquely qualified with that combination of experiences.
Thank you. Ms. Beauty, if you...
So why I want to be secretary? I think that's an awesome question. My background, working as a teacher's assistant with Jumpstart, being an AmeriCorps member, working after I graduated as a social worker, working for folks with developmental disabilities and advocating for their rights, and seeing how hard it is to kind of make sure that they have funding and budgeting to be able to meet their daily necessities. Then I decided to pursue IT to bring in more within my knowledge space and how I can kind of improve. And one of the things that I saw is processes slows down the way that day-to-day people interact. And that's for big companies that have worked at GE, which I've advocated to remove a lot of these processes that would slow down traffic. And then for smaller businesses, which is where I currently work at now. And so what I see in this space is that we need to have someone that has a fresh take on how we can improve our system. For example, when we talk about folks who have been in politics for X amount of years, one of the things that we continuously hear year after year is that certain communities have longer polling lines than others. And for folks who are outside of those communities, they don't believe that to be true. What if we use technology in this space to kind of be able to give you a prompt to say that there's a shorter waiting line to go to your local polling station? That way you could be able to cast your vote. I think that would remove a lot of the polarization, regardless of what party you politically affiliate with. Another thing is, one of the reasons that I'm also running is the frustration that it took for me. That when I lived in Newport and I moved to Bristol, trying to find my polling station, and that had changed. What if we actually gave text message notifications and informed people? So I think that these are common sense solutions that politicians don't seem to care about, but the wheel just keeps turning, and here we are.
Thank you. Thank you. This will be with you, Ms. Beatty. The Secretary of State registers voters, prepares ballots, certifies election results, and administers oaths of office. And this question came from a reader, by the way, so at least the phrasing. What is your boldest vision for free, fair election reform, and what technologies, innovations, and/or systems would you like to implement?
So as you can hear of my eccentric for using modern day technology, to be as fair, fast, and accurate are the three pillars that I'm running my campaign on. Fair, meaning that everyone And that means folks who are homeless, that means folks who are well off, has the right and opportunity to exercise their inherent right to vote. Fast, making sure that when we provide results, that we're using modern day technologies. We're not doing enough to make sure that we are monitoring the tools and we're updating our software systems. People are complaining about when they go to cast their vote and that the system doesn't necessarily work as accurately as it should have. Folks who are poll workers complain of the frustration of information of people who believe that they're supposed to be at a site, that they're not supposed to be there. And so we need to use our modern day IT infrastructure to be able to expedite this process. It should be something so seamlessly, so effective. And why are we not thinking of those spaces? How do we make sure that our results are accurate? One of those things is cyber risk management, cybersecurity. What are we doing in those spaces? What are we doing to make sure that people trust the results that they're given, right? So when we look at politics nowadays, there's a lot of misinformation. How do we make sure that our government is transparent? And that is something that I want to do. I want to be able to provide, which is what we do in tech all of the time, that whenever we do a release update and there's a bug fix, we literally list out the things that we're fixing, the updates that we're making, and we're informing the public that we are doing our due diligence in that space.
Thank you. Representative Amore, same question.
Thank you. Rhode Island is actually rated very high for our election process, and it's rated very accurately, and it has become a better system over the last 8 years under Secretary Gorbea. Specifically, we need to implement the piece of the Let Rhode Island Vote Act that has not been implemented, which is being able to apply for a ballot application online. We need to safely implement the electronic voting option for those that are severely disabled, that the General Assembly passed, and that many other states have passed. That has to be done so that we can give everybody the access they need to vote. I'm an advocate for same-day registration. As well as a permanent ballot list. It exists in many states already. There is no evidence of fraud in any way or chaos in any way associated with those two initiatives. I would really like to, and I think Stephanie can agree with me on this, I'd like to use our voter registration system so that registered voters can indicate on a nomination paper electronically who they're signing for. Because it's an arduous process to get those signatures, and we should make that as open and as technologically feasible as possible. I'm proud to have co-sponsored and voted for early voting, which does address those long lines that we saw at certain points and during certain elections. We should do everything we can to make the process as smooth and as simple as possible. The Let Rhode Island Vote Act does that in many ways, including a no excuse mail ballot.
Thank you.
Name and my
Oh, you just said that you might agree. Did you think that was?
So
right.
I think that there's some places that we have some similarities, but to be quite honest, even with the ability for folks who are developmentally disabled to vote, that is one of the ways that the Let RI Vote Act is very exclusatory. So while on the campaign trail, I've been able to talk to folks, especially since it was within my field of social working, where someone who is blind or visually impaired. Currently, the mail ballot itself literally separates them from having the right to participate in the way that they would like to do so. And so being able to cast ballots in person and using technology in that space seems to be a very common sense approach. And you've been in this space as a politician for a number of years in the General Assembly, and I would like to understand why in your tenure this hasn't been done now, but now you're passing this type of stuff. Now that you have been campaigning for the last 13 months is when the Let RI Vote Act now come into play. So is that politics or is that actually public service?
Are we asking questions of each other?
I figure we can
So-
one response.
So first, I think, politics in my view is honorable. It's public service. I don't use the word as a pejorative. I think it's something that you do to serve your community. I have been the sponsor and co-sponsor of a number of initiatives to open up voting access. And the Let Rhode Island Vote Act passed this year, but it was in the works for many years. And I was a sponsor of that bill as it first appeared. I was a sponsor of the original early voting bill. So this is not new. And the other bill that we were talking about passed this year, but I was a co-sponsor of that bill in prior years as well, about those who are disabled having access to their own equipment to vote a ballot comfortably, or they can use the new machinery, which as a member of the House Finance Committee, I supported the allocation for, for disabled voters.
Thank you. Question number 4. What reforms to the way, now this question is preamble, is about what kind of things you'd advocate, not stuff you might necessarily have the power to do as the Secretary of State, but using the soft power of testifying and talking to legislators. What reforms to the way Rhode Island conducts its elections would you support as Secretary of State? For example, I'm thinking about things like ranked choice voting, publicly funded elections, removal of the asterisks in the top slot on the ballot for endorsed candidates in primaries, or any other ideas you might have.
Sure. In 2014, I co-sponsored the elimination of the master letter. So that's an example of what your question speaks to. Yeah, I'm open to eliminating the asterisk. I'm not sure if the asterisk helps or hurts. When I was elected in 2012, I was not the endorsed candidate. I was running against the leadership, and I ended up winning that election. And as you know, there are many, many people who win elections. But I'd be open to a system where there's a lottery like we have now based on Republican or Democrat, and that lottery determines placement. I think what I talked about in the last question is really something that we can focus on, and that's making the nomination process much easier through that connective voter system and nomination system. I think that's a really good way to do that. The other thing we can do, and when you talk about ranked choice voting, the Secretary of State's office is in a bully pulpit position where we can bring in people in a working group who are experts in these fields. We can bring people in from out of state and be informed by the experiences of, let's say, New York in ranked choice voting, or Alaska in ranked choice voting, open primaries. These are things we should consider. And since there is currently pilot elections and permanent elections in this space, we can learn a lot from that, bring people together, write a report, make a recommendation to the General Assembly, who really has the power to implement these.
Right on time. Eden.
I thought it was interesting that you didn't mention that you were in support of public funding for running for office.
Oh, I am.
So what that pretty much is using taxpayer money to apply for a job. I've never heard of using someone else's money to fund my job application. And then if I don't win, what happens there? Do I get to reimburse the taxpayers for wasting their money because I didn't win? These are some of the things that I think that are, one, that profit and benefit a group, where it marginalizes others. And another concern there is the fact that this type of endorsement of using tax-paying money for funding public offices like myself, right?